Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Gloria. If you are new here, if you can't tell by the title already, I am going to be reading books by AAP authors this month. I really enjoyed prioritizing Black authors for Black History Month in February and women authors and women's stories for Women's History Month in March. So I thought that for May, I would prioritize Asian American and Pacific Islander authors. I have 13 books on this list. These by no means are all the books that I'm going to read in the month. These are just some of the possibilities. I also have a few other books that I want to read in May that aren't by AAP authors. But the ones I'll mention today are just the ones that are going to be on the top of my mind as I pick up books throughout the month, and we'll see what I'm feeling, as the month goes on. I roughly organized them by genre, and let's get started with memoirs. So the first book on my list is I Am Malala, the story of the girl who stood up for education and was shot by the Taliban by Malala Yousafzai. I mentioned this book also for Women's History Month. I didn't get a chance to read it in March. I'm really hoping to pick this one up in May, but this is a story of Malala and how she was riding a bus to school. The Taliban shot her in the head because women weren't allowed to get an education, and she survived that trauma, and this is her story. Sounds incredible. I've heard this book highly recommended, and so I'm really hoping to pick up the audiobook because I love reading and listening to memoirs as audiobooks. That one is definitely on the top of the list. And then another memoir, In Order to Live, A North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom by Yeonmi Park. I believe this book was circulating on BookTube before I ever started watching or joined the community because quite a lot of people have read it and have mentioned it. I think it's one of those popular must-read memoirs, but I imagine that this book is really hard to get through and that there's a lot of trauma and intense conversation about leaving North Korea, but totally a book that is up my alley, a book that I want to dive into, to learn from, and to hear Yeonmi's story. Definitely looking forward to that one. Next up, a newer release, Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. From what I can gather, this is about a Korean girl living in Oregon. She's a musician. She talks about food and losing her mother and that connection that food brings her to her mother. I'm interested to dive into this one. It's mostly set in Oregon. I will say that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to pick it up, and I've heard good things about it. Another memoir also set in Oregon, All You Can Ever Know by Nicole Chung. The quick synopsis of this book says Nicole Chung was born severely premature, placed for adoption by her Korean parents, and raised by a white family in a sheltered Oregon town. This book touches on race and culture, adoption, family, set in Oregon, which is the state that I'm from. I feel like I have this thing where I want to read all the books that are set in Oregon. But yeah, that one sounds interesting. Next up, I have Eat a Peach by David Chang. This is David Chang's memoir. He is the chef of the very popular restaurant Momofuku. He started that restaurant in New York, and he is a big figure in the culinary field. David Chang goes through his childhood, what it was like to grow up, how he fell in love with food, how he started the restaurant, all of those stories that led him to be the successful chef that he is today. So I've heard good things about this book, and I think the cover is lovely. And the last nonfiction on the list is Homebody by Rupee. This is actually a collection of poetry. I read her other two poetry collections in April. You can see my thoughts on those in the wrap-up. I liked them for the most part. This is her third and most recent book, and I'm interested to pick it up to solidify what I truly feel about her poetry and her writing. I don't think I fully love her content, but I want to make like a final informed opinion about what I think about her writing. I will say she's opened up my eyes to poetry, so I'm more inclined to pick up future poetry books, not necessarily by her, but just in general, because I've realized that I do enjoy reading poetry. It just has to be the right content. So we'll see. Nonfiction is definitely one of my favorite genres. But moving into my other favorite genre, historical fiction. The first historical fiction on the list is The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. This is a book that I have not read, that a lot of people have, that I've only heard good things about. I actually don't really know exactly what this is about, except that it has, I believe, dual timelines. It's set in Afghanistan. It's heartbreaking. It's tragic. It'll make you cry. It's a potential 5-star read. That's all I know. I've heard really good things about the author and about his works, and this is definitely a book that I want to read this year, so May would be the perfect time to pick it up. Next up, I have Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. This is a book that I originally heard of because I was walking around with my sister-in-law. We stopped by a little free library, and she saw this book and said she absolutely loved it. She read it in high school, and it was one of her favorite stories that she read in high school. I have not ever heard of this book or really anyone talking about it, and I've seen this this book pop up on the list of books to read for Asian American Pacific Islander month, so thought I would check this one out from the library. It's also much shorter than a lot of the other ones. If I read this book this month, it will also work for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, which is to read a book that you should have read in high school. My sister-in-law mentioned she read in high school, so it should work. This book is a historical fiction. It's set in 19th century China. It follows a girl that has to wade her way through her life of all the cultural things that are put upon her, like foot binding and arranged marriages and all of the implications of what it means to be a female in 19th century China. And this book is about friendship. It sounds really good, something that I would thoroughly enjoy. Next up, I have The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is an author that is very popular. He just recently released a book called Clara and the Sun that a lot of people are reading. I have not read a book by him yet. I don't know how I'm going to feel about him. I feel like this might either be like a love or hate, or maybe I'll be somewhere in the middle. I'm not entirely sure. Quite a few of his books were on my TBR list, like Never Let Me Go. But I went with this one because I actually saw that one of my friends rated this book highly, and it is a historical fiction. It's set in England. It's about a butler, and I feel like it's a little bit more approachable because I'm definitely intimidated by this author and his works. So I feel like this one is a good starting place for me. The last historical fiction on the list is 50 Words for Rain by Asha Lemmie. This is a coming-of-age story about a Japanese girl who's living with her grandparents. I think there's some mystery behind her past and her parentage, and she's sort of set to figure out her life and grow up. Totally sounds right up my alley. Also, I think the cover is beautiful, and I've heard really good things about it. Leaving the historical fiction genre and jumping into thriller, mystery, suspense, I have Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This book I've seen a lot of places on BookTube. This book is considered a literary courtroom thriller about an immigrant family and a single mother accused of killing her autistic son. I think it's set in like a small town community. Sounds very interesting. Some people said that they don't like courtroom drama, trial stuff. I find courtroom dramas very interesting. We'll see how this one fares. I don't know if it'll be too too much legal talk and lawyer talk, or if it'll be interesting and compelling to get through, but it does sound very fascinating to me. Love a good mystery thriller. 2 books left, and I would say 2 that are probably the most out of my comfort zone. I really have a list of quite a few genres, so we'll see what I'm in the mood to pick up. But next up, I have Severance by Ling Ma. I first heard of this book right when I started watching BookTube towards the beginning of 2020, because this is a sci-fi post-apocalyptic. A disease takes over the world, wipes out a population, and people are left to fend for themselves. So sort of relatable, and it also kind of sounds like Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which I read earlier in 2020, and I really enjoyed that one a lot. Gave it 5 stars. So I'm hoping this one's really good and interesting. We'll see. It might be too weird for me. I don't know. But although sci-fi is out of my comfort zone, this one sounds super interesting. I do really like a dystopian post-apocalyptic kind of book, you know? I enjoyed Scythe. I like Walking Dead, the show. I really liked Station 11, like I mentioned. There's a good chance that I will really like this one. And finally, the last one on the list is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshigazu Kawaguchi. This is a fantasy, magical realism contemporary. I would say the book that is the most out of my comfort zone on the list. I heard a lot of people really like this. This has to do with time travel. Customers walk into a coffee shop, they order coffee, and they get to time travel back into their life, I think, to possibly change some events that happened. But the only thing is you have to do whatever you're gonna do before your coffee gets cold. Otherwise, I don't know, you get stuck in time. I'm not entirely sure. Weird. Don't know if I'm gonna like it. Don't know if I'm gonna pick it up because some of the other ones sound a little bit more my taste. I have low expectations of me liking, but I could be surprised. I do like that it's on the shorter end because I like shorter books, but we'll see. We'll see what I pick up. Those are the 13 possible books that I might pick up for the month of May. I'm really hoping to find a gem in there, hoping to really love some of them. Fingers crossed that I have a great reading month for May and read some really good books. Let me know if you've read any of those and highly recommend them, or if you'd like me to prioritize one over the other. I'm coming into this open-minded, so I'm really willing to pick up any of those because they all sound good and sound like something that I should read and would read. So let me know in the comments below. Again, thanks so much for watching, for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you in another video soon. Bye!